Hello everyone. I thought today I'd talk to us about faith. We are all called to live by faith, but what exactly is faith? You may be familiar with the 1947 Christmas classic, The Miracle on 34th Street. It starred Maureen O'Hara and John Payne and the wonderful Edmund Gwynne, and of course, 8-year-old Natalie Wood. I think she was 8 when she did that movie. Payne plays an up-and-coming lawyer who's famously quoted as saying, "Faith is believing when common sense tells you not to." A lot of people have heard that and don't even realize it came from that movie. However, the scriptwriter who came up with that line clearly knew the passage in Hebrews in chapter 11, verse 1 that reads, "Faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not yet seen." So faith can easily be defined as a trust or belief in something or someone without requiring visual proof. I've had many people ask me, how can you believe in a God that you can't see? And then they go on to say that they need to see to believe. You've heard it before, seeing is believing. I then remind these people that a great many scientists believe in God. In fact, far more than you may realize. I read a few years ago, I think it was about 2009 or 10, something like that. There was a poll made by an American research center, and they surveyed a number of scientists. Do you believe in God or not? And it was about 50-50. Roughly half. About 35% said they believed in a God, that you can have a God as Christians believe, that you can have a personal relationship with. And about 15% of them who did believe in a supreme creator weren't quite sure what form that creator took. But they did believe in a type of God. I believe Albert Einstein was one of them. He didn't think it was possible to have a one-on-one relationship with a God. But again, that's human thinking. We have to remember that God isn't human and can do things we can't do. But he did believe that this universe could not have been created just at random. And the other 50% don't, or were unsure. They were agnostic. So it's about 50-50. And it doesn't surprise me, because scientists very often do have to believe in a great many things they can't see. And it might be worth remembering that so does the average person. Because let's look at a few examples of things that you have to believe that you can't see. Do you believe in love? Do you believe in hate, jealousy? Do you believe that wind exists? And what about magnetism or gravity? Do you believe these things exist? And if so, why? I mean, if you need to see to believe, then, and you can't see these things, why would you believe that they exist? And what about imagination? Or even consciousness? You can't see those either. And let's not forget radio waves. And what about Wi-Fi? Your internet, your mobile phone signals, all of these things are invisible. And hunches. People have hunches. Oh, I had a hunch I shouldn't do that, and I was so glad I didn't because whatever. Faith is actually in all of us without thinking, and believing in things we can't see is something we do without even thinking about it. We can believe in these things because we can see the effects of them. You can see what they do. I mean, has anyone ever seen gravity or wind or magnetism? No, of course not. When you love someone, you can see the effects of that love. When people show their love, they very often do things that wouldn't make logical sense. For example, risk your life for someone, or donate a kidney or something like that. Love can make us do things that just don't seem logical. You can't actually see the love, but you can see the result of the love, the evidence of the love, especially when it's directed at us. And what about hate? Oh my goodness. How many examples of hate exist in this world today. People hurt each other for no reason. There's racial hate, there's jealousy, it's just some awful things. And we know it exists because we can see its negative effects. Just like we know that magnetism and gravity exist because we can see their effects. You hold a magnet next to some iron and what happens? The iron is drawn to the magnet and it sticks to it. You drop something and it falls down. That's gravity. It doesn't fall sideways, it doesn't float up. Gravity is the force that causes it to drop down. And what about wind? Look at cyclones and hurricanes. You can't see the wind, but you can certainly see their effects. And even a gentle breeze, you can see it blowing laundry. You can't see the winds, but we know they're there. We can see their results. I listened to a scientist today who was actually a former atheist, and he said there are just far too many things in science that you can't explain without a God. He ended up becoming a Christian because he realized it's just there has to be a God. Even things like morality, the knowledge of good and evil. Even small children know the difference between good and evil. You snatch a toy or food or something off a child and they'll go, hey, that's not fair. Where did they learn this? Some people will say it's the result of socialization, but again, where did the original moral code come from? And you don't have to believe in God to know right from wrong, but it's inherent in all of us, and there's no explanation for it. Even evolution needs some help. There are a lot of people who believe that evolution does away with the need for God. But evolution has its limitations. Yes, there are variations in DNA that can produce slight changes in an organism that are more favorable to its existence than others. But you still need the original organism for the evolutionary pressures to act on it. Those changes will shift a population and cause the animal to be a little bit different from ancestors, but it still follows certain rules. And a lot of people say, mutations, less than 1% of mutations are actually beneficial. And as I say, evolution does need to follow certain rules, and it does have to have an original organism to work on. And I've never understood why people get so upset with the concept of evolution, because, Christians or other people of faith, because you still need that original starting point. I mean, even the Big Bang, the expanding universe theory, it's generally believed, the explanation for the universe is that a supercompressed ball of matter that some scientists think was probably about the size of a plum, exploded. And it exploded, I think to call it a Big Bang is an understatement. It would have been the single greatest explosion in the history of the universe. With all that matter expanding outwards once it was released, it would have been one almighty bang. And we have confirmed that this is what's happening. We know that the universe is expanding outwards, and we can explain all kinds of things like that. But nobody has ever been able to explain where that original ball of supercompressed matter came from. Now, data from space probes and Hubble telescope and things like that have shown us what's happening. But if you can imagine taking all that data and being able to rewind it backwards, as maybe sometimes you see in films, you could rewind it back, pull it back into the supercompressed ball, and then what? You hit a wall. Where did that ball come from? Nobody can explain where that ball came from. Where did the original atoms come from? People say, stars came from molecules, and molecules came from atoms, and atoms came from the Big Bang. But again, it always comes back to, I know that, but where did the first ball of that supercompressed ball come from? Now, people of faith say that it came from the hand of God. And there's really no other explanation. These miracles are all around us. And every time I saw a caterpillar this morning, and every time I see a caterpillar, I just marvel at the little miracle that is a caterpillar. Now, science can explain that the caterpillar, eats the leaves and spins a cocoon, and then at one point it develops and the cocoon splits down the back and out comes a moth or a butterfly. You don't really think about it, but that we all know what a caterpillar looks like. And it goes into that cocoon and it rearranges. It effectively breaks down, completely breaks down and rebuilds itself. So imagine, it's not a very good example, but imagine taking, well, we use Lego blocks. For example, you make a little car out of Lego. And it can roll around the ground, but it can't fly. It can roll around the ground. And then you put it in a cocoon. And in that cocoon, it's somehow, all the little molecules, which are the Lego blocks, they all break apart. And then they rebuild themselves into an airplane. And the airplane is too big. It doesn't fit. The wings need to stretch out. They're folded up. So the cocoon splits. It comes out, and suddenly what went in as a car comes out as an airplane. What went in as something that could only walk the earth comes out as something that can fly through the skies. And people don't really think about it, but that is quite a remarkable miracle. And that kind of miracle is all around us. I mean, the only thing that is really the same between the caterpillar and the butterfly or the moth is it goes in with 3 pairs of legs and it comes out with 3 pairs of legs. Everything else, and even the legs it comes out with are different. They're much longer and more slender in the butterfly. I mean, we think that caterpillars have many more legs. They've got what are called prolegs. They've got 5 pairs of little prolegs, which are they're like little stumps with hooks called crochets. And that's what helps them to climb and cling and stuff. But they've only actually got 3 true pairs of legs that have, think about it, they've got tiny little ankles and knees. Caterpillars have little ankles and knees. And when they come out, so those 3 true legs, 3 pairs of true legs, they come out with 3 pairs of true legs. Because all insects have 6 legs. But we won't get into the whole discussion about caterpillar anatomy. But I just think it's incredible that this entire rearrangement goes on in the cocoon and a totally different animal comes out. If you didn't know that a caterpillar that a butterfly or a moth came from a caterpillar, you would think they were different animals. But we just believe. We believe that when the caterpillar goes in, it's going to come out. We believe in so many things that we just take for granted. Anyway, this scientist that I listened to today, he said something I hadn't actually thought about until he pointed it out. He said, for years people have used science to try to discredit God's existence. And he was one of them at the time. But he said that now so many things are happening in scientific research that are starting to point toward the existence of God, that many of these same people are starting to discredit science. They're just taking a new approach, saying, okay, well, if we can't use science to discredit God, then let's discredit science. And they're starting to come up with these new proposals. And I hadn't realized it until he pointed it out, but he's right. And some of them are quite ridiculous, actually. I mean, here we are in the 21st century, and they've reignited the flat earth theory, despite all the evidence proving it wrong. We know the Earth is a globe. We've got pictures from outer space. We've got astronauts that have flown around it. We've got people in the ISS, the International Space Station. We've got reports everywhere. The evidence is there. You've got eyes. Look, just go online. There are the photographs. We know the Earth is a globe. But the flat earthers have decided, no, we're going to start saying the Earth really is flat. And one of their arguments is, you look at the horizon, look as far as you can, and you can't see the curve. So it has to be flat. Well, I'm not even going to bother arguing that point. You go closer to the horizon, you're going to see more. And if you could kind of circle the whole area from point A to point B and go the entire circle, you'd end up back where you were. You wouldn't drop off anything, but anyway, that one's not worth arguing. And they're coming up with all new weird things to discredit science. One I read about just recently was that there are no such thing as trees. What we see as trees, what we all think are trees, and what scientists want us to believe are trees, are in fact gigantic bushes. You know, some bushes that are 30 meters, 40 meters, 100, 200 feet tall, and that there's no such thing as mountains. You know, those things that we see made of rock are actually ancient trees, and some weird thing happened to them, and never mind that there's no evidence that they were ever living. You know, like trees, you can find a petrified tree or something and know that it was once a living tree. Rocks, you can tell the difference between a living or once living object and a non-living one. And a rock has never been alive. But, you know, these flat earthers are now saying the earth is flat, there's no such thing as trees, rocks have never existed. I don't even argue with them, because they're saying, well, okay, science isn't working for us anymore, so we need to discredit science. Because if you can discredit science, then anything science comes up with that might support the existence of God can also be discredited. So if you can discredit science, you don't have to believe a great creator is responsible for something that science might, where science might point to a great creator. So this brings us back around to faith, believing in something we can't see. I believe that if we can have faith in all these things, of which there is no written evidence, there's no historical document saying that scientists actually did see wind or radio waves or whatever. We can believe in things for which there will never be proof of their existence. What is wrong with believing in things where the gospel tells us that Jesus, even historians who have nothing to do with the faith, know that Jesus existed? If we can have written evidence, documented evidence that Jesus existed and that Jesus was not known to be a liar, why can we not believe what he said? Why can we not trust and have that faith? And faith is actually good for us. It gives us strength, it gives us courage. We know we're never alone, no matter what. We know God is with us. We can get it wrong in this life, but we have time to fix it. I mean, Billy Graham used to always say, don't wait, because you might get hit by a car on the way home. While you have time to get right with God, get right with God. Because you can get it wrong in this life and be forgiven, and that will determine how well you spend your next life, because the next life is eternal. There is no dying in the next life. So what we do here determines what our next life is going to be like. And it all starts with having faith. You know, if you're in doubt or whatever, I'm hoping these talks will plant ideas in your mind and get you thinking about a few things. And if your faith is lukewarm, I'm hoping they'll help reignite it. And if nothing else, just to tell you why I think what I think, and what people often say to me, you're a scientist who believes. What about A, B, and C? So what? And for about 2 years now, I've been getting told, why don't you make a channel? Why don't you make a channel? So that's what I'm doing. So I'd like to end with a prayer, and then that'll be the end of this talk. Loving Heavenly Father, we thank you that although we can't put you in a test tube and prove your existence, we can prove you exist by things that happen. And you've given us daily examples like wind and mobile phone waves and Wi-Fi and stuff, Bluetooth, all of these things that we can see exist without seeing them. And this will help people to take that step. I hope will help them to take that step of faith towards you, knowing that having you in their life is just such a tremendous blessing. And our lives are all richer for having you in our life. You're there whether we want to believe or not. And I pray that the people come to you as they can, and those of us who do believe you continue to walk with you, and thank you for the many, many blessings you give us every day. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen. Until next time, God bless.